Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Kasper.
We're doing a little bit of a countdown to, in my opinion, the biggest keys to victory for the Packers heading into this playoff matchup on Saturday night. So yesterday, we hit up on one key to victory, which I put out there is Packers have to make sure they come away with touchdowns and not settling for field goals all the time, especially when they get into the red zone. That's something that Green Bay, you look at their games against the Bears this year, even you just look at that Lions and Bears game this past weekend. Lions did come away with a victory, but, Lions had opportunities to kind of blow that game out the window, but with that Bears defense, a bend don't break, they're able to hold them out of the end zone. And I think Green Bay, if they can have success in the red zone with getting touchdowns instead of field goals, it's going to go a long ways for that team to come away with a victory. So that was the first one we hit up. Today, I think another probably obvious one for Green Bay is the run defense. Regardless of what happened against Minnesota and such, it's still fresh in our mind of what happens in that Baltimore game. Okay, Derrick Henry, what Baltimore was able to do against Green Bay's defense and just running the football, it is still clearly fresh in the mind of every Packers fan, and it should be. It absolutely should be. And you look at this Bears team, they are third best. They finished the regular season as the third best running team in all of football. The only two teams above them, Buffalo and Baltimore. Now, for what it's worth, when you look at these two games between the Packers and the Bears from the regular season, if we kind of look at it, Green Bay in their first game held Chicago to 32 carries for 138 yards. Swift had 63. Nange had 57. Caleb Williams had 15. So, but kind of break it down a little bit more. Swift, 13 carries for a 63, averaged about 4.8 yards per carry. So overall, Chicago was still able to put up 138 yards on the ground. Then in game two, kind of similar, but overall, still Chicago, team-wise, ran the ball for 150 yards. Green Bay actually in this game, 192 yards, but that was on 44 carries. So Chicago, team average, 5.8 yards per carry. They do a good job of breaking it up between DeAndre and Kyle. It is no doubt going to be, I would imagine, this week in preparation leading up to this game, this playoff matchup. It is going to be priority number one, a top priority for Jeff Hafley and this defense to figure out how can we stop the run? How can we take this out? Is Jonathan Ford an answer? Did they see anything from a Baron Sorrell or any of the other guys who had an opportunity against Minnesota where they're going to put them in? I really don't know what the game plan is going to be. You're probably going to see a lot of base. If Rome Odunze is back for this game too for the Bears, which they're hoping, I mean, then you got to kind of figure that out too with Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, Luther Burden. You've got your tight ends. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Chicago's offense presents a major challenge for Green Bay's defense. It's just facts. It presents a major challenge. And you've got a very, very good play caller in Ben Johnson and an aggressive play caller in Ben Johnson too. I mean, it's going to be crucial for this Packers defense to try to keep Chicago in third and long situations. Because it's pretty much a foregone conclusion, I think. If it's third and short, it's two-down territory. If it's third and short, even if they don't pick it up, they're going to go for it on fourth. And they're probably going to run the ball a couple times, whether it's Caleb Williams on a naked bootleg or running it up the middle with Swift or Kyle or anything like that. That's pretty much a foregone conclusion at this point. And a lot of it is going to deal with if can Green Bay stop the run on the early downs. Can they put them in third and long situations? Can Green Bay win up front? Chicago has one of the better offensive lines in all of football. This is the one thing that Chicago did really well in the offseason, is they invested heavily into that offensive line. And Bears fans probably saying at that time, and probably saying now, it's like, it's about dang time. And just look at what it has meant for this ball club, for this offense. Weird, a quarterback plays well behind a good offensive line. A running game gets going behind a good offensive line. Weird how that works out. You invest up front. You invest with the big boys. And look at the results from this. If we did like position breakdowns, matchups, which I plan on actually doing a little bit later on this week, but I can tell you right now, offensive line versus the Packers defensive line, advantage, Bears offensive line versus the Packers defensive line, advantage Bears offensive line any day of the week and twice on Sunday. So how does Jeff Hafley and how does this Packers defense try to slow down that that Bears running attack without those guys, without those running backs advancing to the second level or the third level, not allowing big gains, not allowing 5 yards per carry? It is going to be a very difficult, tough task. It puts a lot of pressure on those linebackers, the Edgerrin Coopers, the Quay Walkers, Isaiah McDuffie's, those guys. They're going to have to, they may have to be a little bit more aggressive in this thing, which, let's not kid ourselves too, might bite us in the butt a few times. But they might have to be a little aggressive in their diagnosing of plays and like, okay, I'm going to hit this hole hard instead of, just kind of waiting to react. You might have to take a gamble here. And like, I'm going to hit this hole. And hopefully you almost kind of guess right, and you bring down the ball carrier behind the line of scrimmage or right at the line of scrimmage. I don't think Green Bay can just continue to get away with relying on their linebackers to take down the running backs at that second level, gosh forbid the third level. They may have to be a little bit more aggressive in this thing. And it might burn them a couple times, but they might have to do that. And the other part in this whole thing too does kind of, okay, so how do you stop the run? How can the Packers offense help stop the Bears running attack? Goes back to our key from the other day. Put up touchdowns instead of field goals. If you jump out to an early lead, if you're putting up some big numbers right away, well, then if Chicago's got to play a little bit of catch-up here, it takes a little bit of that running game out. Now, I would argue this, though, too. I feel like Ben Johnson isn't going to completely abandon the running game, especially if they're down by just touchdown 10 points or something like that. He's not going to completely abandon it. But if somehow Green Bay can enter midway through the third or at the beginning of the fourth quarter where they're up 14, 17 points or something like that, then it changes a little bit. But the offense can help this thing out. The offense can help out by putting up touchdowns right away. The offense can help out by controlling the time of possession and keeping this Bears offense on the sidelines. Complementary football. But if we go back to the Packers' defensive side, it's Colby Wooden, it's Jonathan Ford, it's Carl Brooks, it's Rashawn Gary, it's Lucas Van Ness, it's Enoch Barre. Those guys up at the front. Buckle a chin strap and let's go. You have to be your man. You have to fill those gaps. You have got to play sound football. I want to see these guys dominate in the trenches. It is going to be incredibly tough against this offensive line from Chicago. But buckle the chin strap and let's go. And I hope they still remember that Baltimore game and how embarrassed they got at the hands of that running attack from Baltimore. It was embarrassing. 300 yards? Come on. Inexcusable. And I kind of fault Hafley for that too. It's like you can't just keep... Obviously, something was not working. Something was broke. People weren't doing their jobs. And this might not be completely fair for me because I'm on the outside like a lot of us, if not everybody, just watching. It's like, okay, it seems like we're still trying to do the same thing, change something up, do something different. And maybe they did and still wasn't working, but it sure didn't look like they were. You got to come in with a different game plan now. You got to do something different with this thing. It is going to be incredibly important for this Packers defense to try to slow down that run. And if Chicago gets off to a little bit of a slower start in terms of not putting up points right away, take advantage of that. Don't let the foot off the gas. And whoever's playing ends on certain downs, whether it's Rashawn Gary, whether it's Lucas Van Ness or Kiki or Baron Sorrell or Byron Cox Jr. or Colin Oliver or whoever it is, set that edge. We know Caleb Williams. That's a part of the running game that they got to slow down, for crying out loud. They got to set that edge. And they got to have their head on a swivel. Linebackers, show off that speed. Easier said than done, but this is quite the challenge for this Packers defense to kind of take out this running attack from Chicago. Packers offense can help out in this case too. Doing a bit of a countdown of some of the most memorable Packers-Bears games, because this is only the third time these two rival teams, throughout their 200-some matchups in the regular season, this is only the third time that these two teams have faced each other in the postseason. But they have had memorable games, and they have had some memorable late-season games, December, final week of the season, that allowed a team to get to the postseason, stopped the team to get to the postseason, maybe even winning a division. So even though they haven't had a lot of postseason games, they've had some memorable late season games. So yesterday, I threw in the final regular season game from this year. I mean, that was kind of really for the division championship when you kind of look at it all. So, I mean, that kind of helped Chicago get the division championship and get the 2 seed in this thing and host this game and potentially hosting another playoff game, depending on the result of this one. So that was my number 5. Number 4 in my countdown. And it was just the anniversary of this a few days ago. I was at this game. You go back to that Super Bowl 45 team, the final game of the regular season. Was it January 2nd? I think it was January 2nd off the top of my head. Packers-Bears. There was a lot of talk heading into that game. Would the Bears rest some starters? And that was before, the 2 seed had to play the following week. That was still when the top 2 seeds had byes in the first round of the playoffs. So there was some talk about, hey, are they going to play starters or not? Bears did play starters. Packers win. They're in as a wild card. Bears already had it locked up for the division and that bye. So it was not a lot of scoring in this game. 10-3 victory for the Packers. Chicago had a 3-0 lead going into the half. Packers tied it up in the third quarter, and then just one touchdown pass to Donald Lee in the fourth quarter, the beginning parts of the fourth quarter. And that was the difference. And then Jay Cutler throwing the interception at the end to one Nick Collins. And this was a game, too, where the running for Green Bay just wasn't getting it done. Aaron Rodgers was your leading rusher. 7 carries, 21 yards. James Starks had 5 carries for 20 yards. Brandon Jackson, 7 carries for 19 yards. Total-wise, 23 carries for 60 yards, 2.6 average. Rodgers finished the game 19 of 28 for 229 yards, including a touchdown and a pick. Jay Cutler, 21 of 39 for $168, 2 interceptions. Matt Forte ran the ball 15 times, though, for 91 yards. But I was at that game. That's my first Packers-Bears experience. And I can tell you there's 2 things I remember vividly about that game. And they all came at the end. I mean, I remember a lot of things about the game. I remember the touchdown was right in front of me and seeing the pick and all that. But there's 2 things when I think back on this game. Bill Jarch, the great public address announcer for the Packers, after that game was clinched in that. And I remember him saying to the crowd, with this victory, the Green Bay Packers have officially clinched a playoff spot. And the crowd going nuts and the image on the billboard. I don't know why, but I vividly remember that the way Bill Jarch just said it to get the crowd pumped up. And then I remember Donald Driver, Jordy Nelson, James Jones, and Aaron Rodgers going around the stadium, the whole bowl, and high-fiving fans before they went into the locker room. It was those 4. Because obviously that was the final game at Lambeau for that year. And then lo and behold, we know what happened afterwards. The playoff run, they're back. The next time they'd be back at Lambeau Field, I was also there, the return to Titletown. So, but that was obviously a game that we all knew. You win, you're in. High pressure, hot, tense feeling. I was sitting next to a Bears fan. Not all Bears fans are like this. Not picking on him, but this guy was just, I mean, he was not pleasant. We'll just keep it that way. But getting a 10-3 victory in a hard-fought battle, a very low-scoring affair. And I know there were some questions about whether, Chicago, were they really trying? Were they trying hard in that? But, I mean, hey, defensively, they were holding Green Bay, right? But that's number 4 on my countdown. That obviously allowed Green Bay in. And then, of course, you probably already know what's going to be very high on this list. Just a few weeks later, it would be Chicago and Green Bay again for the right to go to Super Bowl 45. So that's number 4 on my countdown. Well, it really started, this topic really started, I think, yesterday from Adam Schefter when he was on Pat McAfee's show. And he was asked about Matt LaFleur, contract status and such. And the way he kind of came out and said he feels like it's more about a money issue, like a contract issue. Can the Packers and Matt LaFleur come to an agreement on the dollars? That's kind of the gist of what he's saying. Can they come to that agreement? So it sparked this conversation amongst Packers fans and others out there about, okay, if we go back in history, is this another sign, another example of the Packers being, quote, I guess, cheap when it comes to their coaches and coaching staff? And people are looking at different examples. One that's being floated out there is the whole Mike Holmgren thing, and I think that was more about GM title than anything. But the one that I go to is there was that report when Matt LaFleur was first hired that he wanted to hire Darren Rizzi, who is a well-known, well-respected special teams coordinator, and he came into Green Bay, interviewed, wanted a certain amount of money. Matt wanted to give it to him, but apparently wasn't allowed to give him the contract that he was looking for. He moved on, and we know the Packers have had issues. But then, a few years ago, what does Green Bay do? after having issues amongst issues with special teams, they break the bank for Rich Bisaccia. Now, we can get into the debate about whether that's worked out or such, but that's neither here nor there here. But they opened up the bank there. So it got me thinking, if this truly is the case, and this truly has been a thing, where Green Bay has kind of, I guess, handcuffed some of their head coaches in terms of allowing them to pay their assistants or allowing them to go outside and bring in other assistants, because that's been another example for this has been, well, you look at Green Bay, they've really promoted from within in a lot of different areas and such. That's because they can't go out there and get these other assistants and such. And I think that's more so on probably the offensive side of things. When you look at, if we use the McCarthy tenure and a little bit from the LaFleur tenure here. And so, first off, I don't know if this really is a thing. I don't know. It could be just pure speculation. It could be part truthful. It could be a little bit in the middle, or maybe it is 100% truthful. But I'll say this. If Green Bay head coaches, I'll start there. If Green Bay head coaches have been handcuffed over the years in terms of what they can give their assistants or what they have been able to do in terms of trying to bring in assistant coaches, but they've been limited because of the amount of money that they've been budgeted, I think that's weak sauce coming from Green Bay. We can't sit here and say that it's all about championships, and that's the ultimate goal. You can't sit there and say that, but then put limits on areas that help you compete for those championships, that help you go after those championships. You can't do that. And that's really weak. Again, I don't know if that's the case or not. I don't know if that's why all those years, like Mike McCarthy had a lot of the same assistants or was very loyal to Dom Capers or whatever. I don't know if that's why Matt LaFleur brought in Joe Barry, because budget-wise he couldn't afford to bring in another defensive coordinator that was commanding more money. I don't know. But that's the thought process being thrown out there now because of this whole thing about, well, does Green Bay really want to pay Matt LaFleur what some of the coaches are getting right now? Like Ben Johnson's making more than him. You got other coaches that are making more, new coaches that are making more. There's probably going to be some first-time head coaches that right now are going to be making the same amount, maybe even a little bit more than Matt LaFleur. And Matt LaFleur has the right to say, wait a minute now, I should be paid more, or at that same type of market based off of, what I've done so far. He has every right to say that and demand that or want that. But, I mean, if this truly is a thing where Green Bay has been unwilling in times to open up the pocketbook a little bit for assistant coaches, I mean, it's given me some dang flashbacks to college football in Wisconsin. Right? How many times did we have that conversation? Like in football, it's like they can't pay their assistants. Go to bigger programs and they can pay their assistants. You don't hear that too much anymore. It's more about, can you pay the players and not the assistants? But it's given me flashbacks of that. And if that truly is the case, and it has been the case, shame on Green Bay. Shame on them for that. You can't sit there and preach about it's time to win championships, or that's always the ultimate goal, is to compete for a championship, and not exhaust every resource or open up every resource possible to help you win championships. If you know there is a weakness, but you're not willing to do anything about it, or we can do an upgrade here, or we can do better here, but you're not willing to do your part, shame on you. And maybe this is just all speculation. Maybe it is. And I hope to gosh it is. Because if we're talking about a professional franchise and their unwillingness to pay, in some cases, maybe top dollar for assistants and such, come on. Green Bay's not struggling money-wise. They're they're the only team in the National Football League that has to release their their dollar amounts, their revenue. They do it at the shareholders meeting. They're in decent shape. And I'm not saying that they should go out there and give Matt LaFleur $20 flipping million a year, or, go out there and get a defensive coordinator that's going to cost $15 million more. I'm not saying your defensive coordinator should make more than your head coach or something like that, but come on now. And if Rich Bisaccia has really taken over the budget where you can't afford to do all this, well, hey, I'll tell you what, brother. Maybe relook at special teams coordinator and reassess some of that stuff. I hope this isn't true. I hope that this thought process out there isn't true, that Green Bay's being stingy when it comes to coach pay. I really hope it's not. And right now, I hope it's just pure speculation. But if it is, if there is some truth to it, and I get it, you don't want to be free willy-nilly when it comes to just, oh, yeah, hey, we'll give you all this and make you the highest paid. I understand. I get that. You want to look at everything, look at, results. It's a results-based business. But also, if you want to be able to bring in the best of the best, or the best possible, why make it more difficult? Why handcuff it? Why restrain it? And if this has been going on for years, and let's just say it has, maybe part what limited Mike McCarthy from making moves over the years, maybe LaFleur a couple times. Yeah, I look at those situations a little bit differently then, because maybe they weren't allowed to make some of those moves, to make some of those changes. I don't know. Again, I don't know. We're just basing this all off of what people are kind of saying right now. I was kind of curious to see if I could find the highest paid NFL coaches. And this is from Front Office Sports. It was updated April of 25, so before the season began, just to kind of see where Matt LaFleur was ranked. And according to Front Office Sports, Matt LaFleur, 17th highest paid NFL coach. Liam Cohen is top 10. Now, again, remember, this is before the season started, before we knew the Jaguars were going to be in the postseason. Liam Cohen was already the 10th highest paid coach, $12 million per year. Ben Johnson, $13 million, tied for 7th, along with Kevin O'Connell, $13 million. Mike McDonald from Seattle, $9 million. I have no problem with Matt LaFleur saying, hey, I should be getting paid just as much as those guys. I think he should. I mean, you're talking about Kevin O'Connell making more than double than what Matt LaFleur is. So he wants a pay raise. He wants a new contract. I completely understand. If it's a money thing, I think the argument should be made. I think Matt LaFleur has a legit argument. Now, does it come at the detriment of paying some assistants and such? There's another issue potentially. I don't know. Again, I hope it's a lot about nothing, but maybe it's another thing to kind of follow along with this, with this whole issue, if it even is an issue at this point. But yeah, I don't fault Matt LaFleur one bit. Where if he's seeing, man, those guys are making more than double than what I am. Yeah, I want a pay raise on my new contract. I don't want just status quo.